Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Ann Daniels, and I am part of the Shakespeare in Prisons Network, part of our programming team, which is a team that we've kind of pulled together to be responsive to this community during our COVID crisis, and to really talk about and bring folks together to build some community around the work that we traditionally do and the world that we find ourselves in now and hopefully tomorrow. I am joined today by a wonderful group of colleagues to talk about programming in prisons during this pandemic. And I'm going to ask everyone to join us one at a time, and we'll start with Tommy.
Hi, everyone. Greetings. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. My name is Tommy Demenkoff. I'm the Director of Arts Education for the New York City Department of Correction. What my role is I design and deliver programming in all the New York City jails. We have a Fine and Performing Arts division, which came together in a really unique way with a response to communicating with artists in our community of New York. There's a fine arts director, and I work on the performing arts and the creative writing aspects. We also have a faculty of 4 interdisciplinary artists that work on the inside with us, teaching and guiding the community partners that come and deliver programming. I've been doing this work for close to 20 years, and this is a thrilling time with lots of opportunity and challenges, and I'm appreciating gathering today to have this conversation to hear what people are up to and how we're facing this pandemic and this crisis together. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's my turn, right? And good morning to those of you that are on Pacific time. My name is Richard Loya. Again, you guys call me Rich. In the bio, mine was probably the shortest of introduction, and it was okay with me to leave it that way because I wanted to say to you personally, what it didn't say was that I was formerly incarcerated. So I was a lifer. I spent 30 years in the California prison system. In 1988, I was a young man, confused, involved in gangs, drugs, and I committed murder and got tried as well. And I picked up a 27 to life sentence. I've been home a little over 2 years now, and being introduced to this program while I was incarcerated, it changed my life. It's the reason, if not the biggest reason, why I'm home now and why I continue to work with this organization. We're a teaching theater ensemble team. So we deal with emotions, happy, angry, sad, and afraid. And as if you can imagine, in prison, you don't get to express or live out those emotions. For most, it's just anger. I know for me, it was just anger, and that's how I survived my life sentence inside. And the Actors Gang Prison Project came in and just taught me a different way to reconnect with my emotions. It was 25 of us, 25 inmates who started this class, this group. And of the 25 up to date, 21 of us are home now. 15 were ex-lifers. And now I continue, like I said, I continue to work. I go back inside, believe it or not. I spent 30 years trying to get the heck out of prison, and now I voluntarily go back in. And so not only in the prisons, but I'm also in the reentry programs. I would go to transition, work at Walden House, Right 36. We're there every Thursday, and it was sad because right before we were shut down with the quarantine and stay-at-home order, that week we had the culmination coming up for graduation for the men there, and we didn't get to have it. So it definitely affected them, our program, and so we're looking forward to starting it back up. But yeah, that's my story, and I hope to share more with you later on. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Rich. Hi, I'm Rowan, Rowan MacKenzie from Shakespeare UnBard. So I'm our English contingent for today. So I have the joy of being the artistic director of the first European collectively owned theatre companies based within prisons. So myself and some mates work together. So I have the joy of working with the Gallowfield Players, which is a lifers unit, and also with Emergency Shakespeare, which is a sex offender unit. So have been working in prisons for 3 years now on a completely voluntary basis, and it's linked into my PhD, which is due to be submitted later this year, about using Shakespeare with marginalised individuals and marginalised communities. So people who are incarcerated, people with mental health issues, people with learning disabilities, people who've experienced homelessness. For me, it wasn't something I ever saw myself doing, and I kind of stumbled into it and then discovered it was probably the most beautiful and most amazing thing that I've ever been lucky enough to be part of. And my life's changed for the work that I've done. And I'm proud to say that a lot of my guys have changed for the work that we've done together. So COVID-19 has been a real challenge, but we're working through it. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But now I'm going to hand over to Frannie Shepherd-Bates, who will talk about her work.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Rowan. As she said, I'm Frannie Shepherd-Bates, and I'm the director of Shakespeare in Prison, which is Detroit Public Theater's signature community program. We founded our program in 2012 at Michigan's only women's prison, and since then we've worked, continued to work with the women there, and also we've worked with incarcerated men and youth in residential treatment centers. We also have a post-release program that I'll talk a bit about later, where we're able to work with our alums of our program after they've gone home on a variety of things, able to advise us as we continue to develop the program collaboratively. We're also working on putting out a book that I'll talk more about later, but we're powering through this time and developing new models that we'll talk about, and just figuring out how we get through this together and continue to do our work. That's what I got for now.
Thank you, everybody, for those great introductions. I'm super excited to just have all of us here in this moment. I wanted to share a little bit about why I'm moderating this conversation. I currently am the director of the mobile unit at the Public Theater. And I've only been there for a year, and as part of my sort of entry into the theater, I kind of looked around at the relationships that we had that were currently existing, and the mobile unit has a really great relationship in terms of being able to be a presenting entity in correctional facilities around New York. Previous to the Public Theater, I was at the Old Globe Theater, where I helped to develop the program called Reflecting Shakespeare for about 6 years. And so that was my entry point into this world, and I found myself really going, some of the best days that I have are when I am here in this place, and, working with community that has never really been able to sort of embrace her in this way, but as a personal tool and a communal tool. And I thought, I have to do this, I can't leave this behind. And so being in New York now, I'm wondering how I can utilize that. That being said, I actually also was able to convince the institution that we needed to be doing programming. And the week everything happened, the close down happened of everything, of course, was the week that I was scheduled to launch in one of the prisons in New York. So that being said, there's been very much in my mind, I've spent a lot of weeks trying to figure out how to be responsive and to pivot programming. And then in the network, we took that survey a few weeks back of all the folks that are part of the Shakespeare in Prisons Network. And there was just a lot of questions about what could we do to continue, stay connected, to be part of helping our communities there survive, and to continue to be good partners as well, right, to the correctional systems. And so I think that this content, knowing that all of you have deep engagement happening in all of those spaces, that it's really, really important for us to have a conversation where we can share our knowledge with our broader community. So briefly, I'm going to pause because we also have been joined by our final panelist, and I would love for her to just take about a minute to introduce who she is and what she does. Lesley, do you mind? You're muted, Lesley.
Hi, thank you so much for welcoming me to the panel. My name is Lesley Schisgall-Currier, and I am the co-founder of Marin Shakespeare Company and the founder of Shakespeare for Social Justice, which started with a single Shakespeare class at San Quentin State Prison and now serves 14 carceral institutions around the state of California.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to just invite everybody to turn their video on right now, and so we can begin sort of having a little bit more of an organic conversation. So now that we have everybody here, I'm so excited. I'm going to start off with just briefly to just say, hey, how has your programming been impacted by COVID? And anybody can start.
Well, I'll start. So, obviously, all of Michigan's correctional facilities are closed to outside programs right now, and so we're looking at ways that we may be able to continue to engage folks on the inside. We haven't found those ways yet. Really focused on our post-release program right now. Really working with alums on stuff we were already working on with them. And continuing to everything that we do in our program between facilitators and participants. And so really think closely to their advice about what we should be doing right now. And so we're looking at doing some more structured remote programming if we can. That can be joined online or by phone for folks who can't go online. Yeah, just kind of enhancing what it is we were already doing and actually figuring out more ways of fulfilling the mission for that post-release program with the time and space that we have to do that now.
We had 10 performances scheduled right before sheltering in place, with all of the actors getting ready to perform, having memorized their lines, props and costumes pulled and submitted for permission to bring for all of the institutions. So it was incredibly sad for us to have to stop programming. I will say we all felt that the state of California was a little slow to keep us out of the prisons. We thought that they probably should have done it sooner. And now they are talking about having us coming back in. We've heard maybe as early as July. So the staff is working on scheduling classes so that classrooms, classrooms can get cleaned in between programs, and so that there's enough space in the classroom for social distancing. They've told us that we may need to reduce the number of participants in our classes. And what we've been doing in the meantime is called here alternative programming. And at first, for a couple months, we were told that it was to create videos. And then after a while, we were told, oh yeah, you can send us materials as well. So we have created a series of 5 instructional videos around the script of Romeo and Juliet, because they're going to, the videos are seen by every participant in our classes. And we thought that that was a story that more people would connect to. We hired our team as well as actors from our professional company. And we also hired 8 formerly incarcerated actors. And we read the play by Zoom with kind of instructional commentary and probing questions between each scene. So that was our Romeo and Juliet project. We were really excited to be able to include a lot of formerly incarcerated actors. And then we're also creating workbooks. Our first one is about sonnets and writing your own sonnet. And we're doing other things that we're sending in. And for some of those materials, it's some of the places that we think it's important to do some Spanish language translation, because some of our students don't have a lot of English, and it's easier in a classroom setting when you can act something out and bring somebody along, explain, and have other people in the class explain. But when it's just written materials, we thought it was important to do some Spanish translation. So that's the alternative programming that we're doing right now. Honestly, we're nervous about going back into the prisons as soon as we think they're going to want us to come back in. Of course, we can't wait to be back in, but we're nervous about whether we're going to be asked to come back in before we feel that it's really safe, and what kind of safeguards we can take to protect our students and our teaching artists.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think I could just add that in New York City, we have a very unique architecture. And so all of the programming that we've been delivering in fine and performing arts, we don't have theaters, we don't have classroom spaces readily available. About 85 to 90% of the programming we deliver is all done on unit inside of the day room of a housing unit. So there's a unique way that we adapt the programming, we modify and we tailor it to fit in those spaces. And it's been a very successful thing for us because it's given us such great access to our detainees in delivering programming directly to them. When the world shifted, we instantly, the first day, hunkered down with the team and took everything that we have been delivering from community partners to our internal programming, and instantly in 24 hours turned it all into paper. And we hit all the gates with paper through our social services and through our officers, housing units, so we didn't miss a beat with the familiar curriculum in music, dance, poetry, creative writing, origami challenges. Everything we did instantly went in paper so that we didn't really lose time. And as that was happening, we weren't sure from day to day in the first what our future would be, until the commissioner's office sent us a memo and said, "You are essential. You're an essential worker." That changed the game for us right away. So we looked to our tablet system, which was at the time only in 2 facilities. And the agency went ahead and expanded the tablet system, so it's now being rolled out in every single facility, and all detainees will have it. The unique thing about our tablet system that I recognized instantly was that most tablet systems throughout prisons and jails across the country and around the world charge inmates or detainees for this service to be able to use it. I know some places where you're charged cents a minute to read a Wikipedia article, which is not something that happens in our facility. These tablets are purchased and given to detainees. They don't pay anything for it, and all the programming, therefore, is very free. It's very much centered in education and enlightenment. We fit right away into that model. We instantly put out a blast to all of our community partners that work with us, because I recognized right away that when the pandemic hit, that social media erupted with this enormous outpouring of humanity and beautiful performances from home that everybody was doing. And that was free and accessible to everybody except men inside our jails. And so I started reaching out to those individuals, to the big name stars, and also to our community partners. And the outpouring has been extraordinary. We've now developed a project called the Right Now Project, because the social justice movement, the pandemic, all this stuff is taking time on the outside. But right now, today, who's doing something now? And we're delivering content and programming as best we can immediately day. And while all of that other stuff gets worked out on the outside, because we don't want to let a moment slip by that somebody doesn't have some engagement or an opportunity to engage with something, especially in the arts, which has proved to be probably one of the most successful things that we deliver in our system, for the main reason that the arts programming has nothing to do with why anybody is there, but it has everything to do with who they are. And so with that as our mission and the core of our group and our faculty, we started proceeding with creating and curating video content. And the video content we work with, we're doing performances, and our internal faculty We've gotten many performances from large Shakespeare companies to companies that develop new work, from musical performing artists, from artists of all different disciplines and backgrounds. And our internal faculty is then putting that on the tablet, but building curriculum around it, similar to what we do when we actually are inside delivering that curriculum. So in other words, you may see a concert from someone that's performing a certain selection of music, and we will build curriculum around music so that what we can do is guide them to a much deeper understanding and experience with viewing that work and engaging with it. And so what this is going to provide for us in the future is that we've had the tablet program, hasn't been as robust, obviously, as it is now. So taking advantage of that, we are really driving the programming of the tablet. We return back in, and we haven't been given any dates yet, but once we go back in, we'll have the tablets as an extra resource to work with. And we'll use that to be able to see the class performance coming in. The Chelsea Symphony comes to us a lot as one example, and they will come in, and several of their performance pieces will already tablet. You'll become familiar with them, and then you'll have an understanding of who these artists are via the tablet. It gives us another extension to work with. And so I think that the last thing I can say, and then we've got more things to discuss and questions and all, is that I think that once we were determined that we were essential and programming was essential, it really changed the game, because I've talked to other colleagues in the country, because I started listening to everybody in prisons and jails everywhere. And I do a lot of work with the LASD, Five Keys Charter School, and EBI in Los Angeles. That everybody was having, we all kind of shared that information. And I'm hopeful that the things I've learned and that I share and that I'm gaining from all of you today and this conversation that goes forward will help inform a lot of the decisions going forward, especially with determining content and the type of content we curate, because we're working off the models and things that we've had in the past, but yet we're also building for the future and listening to the needs and the interest, and also being mindful of where we're moving as a society. And that's an exciting time for us to be able to respond like that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you.
And speaking of Los Angeles, Rich, first I have to tell you that I went to UCLA, so I'm really offended by your hat. And secondly, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I love it. So far I've heard UCLA and Notre Dame, so you know where that stands. Yeah, so first off, I want to touch on what affected us most was that the reentry program that I mentioned. So we're at a transition home, and unlike prison, prison, the men and women get to meet up every week when they go to their class. And reentry, we're only there for 10 weeks. So we have 10-week sessions, and we try to give them as much as we could in those 10 weeks. And so for 9 weeks, these men at Health Right 360, it had been one of our better groups as far as learning the style of theater that we were teaching there, and understand that being at home, they're like literally one wall away from freedom. So there's a lot of distraction. They can get passes to go out, and these are men and women who are in the process of transitioning back into society. So there's a lot of distraction, but this group had took it to another level. I mean, they really, really took, we were there to teach, they were internalizing it. It was spreading. The counselors that work at the reentry program would tell us, hey, this time more than any other, it's spreading throughout the house. Like the guys want to sign up for the next session. Okay, we're good. So we're setting up for the graduation. I think our graduation was the 19th, March 19th. And if you remember, I think it was the 16th or 17th when they shut it down in March. And so, and it's a day when we open up the doors to their families and friends. So it's an opportunity with their families. And a lot of them tell us, my kids are gonna get to see me play or be a kid again, and how I'm gonna come out and play. There's never a script. Most of our work, 99% of it is improvisation. So there's no storyline. And so that's always a challenge. But again, these guys were so into their culmination, their presentation for the family, and then we were told that they were going to cancel because of the COVID and stuff. So that really affected us. We don't know how many are left because, again, they're transitioning. So some of them might have left the house. So we don't know how many are left. So when we do return, how that's going to play out. Going into the prisons, you know, it stopped out. Just like Lesley, we are sending videos within materials. We give them assignments. So our company is based on, our theater is based on 14 stock characters, right? Sorry, my monitor is shaking. Based on 14 stock characters. So we would give them prompts like, what would the people from the village be feeling like, you know, through this pandemic? Or how would Mrs. So-and-so be dealing with it? And so we give them assignments and they send them back to us. You know, we have a PO box where they can send drawings, writings, poems that they've been returning back to us, just to kind of keep them connected with the work. And so we haven't heard when we're going back in. We don't know what that's going to look like. Today, I just read, sadly to say, a woman in CIW, which is a women's prison, and in CIN, a man and a woman passed away from COVID. So July, it's kind of early, I think, for us to get back in, because we're still dealing with it out here. The numbers, and so I can imagine what that's like inside. You know, I was there. So I know that the healthcare is not, you know, what it should be. To keep people separated, you cannot. I don't care what they put out in the news and saying that they're taking care of it. You can't, especially the overcrowdedness that's going on inside in dorms. You have 14, 16 men and women living in a dorm setting. How can you feet away from each other? You can't. And so that scares me, to know that they're dealing with that. And I don't know when we're going back in. So we try to keep as much as we can connected with them through the videos. In fact, tomorrow we're gonna film another little video for them and send it out to them on Monday. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess time to talk about what I'm doing in the UK as the person that's here from the UK. So I run two theatre companies, as I said, Gallowfield Players and Emergency Shakespeare. Gallowfield Players have been running for almost 2.5 years now. Emergency Shakespeare for 18 months. Just set up in the equivalent of Supermax. So in probably our highest security prison in the country. We were just founding the theatre company in there as well. So big blow to get suddenly everything stopped. In all of them, I'd had fortunately been able to talk to the guys before that happened, just say, look, this is likely. The Emergency Shakespeare company were due to perform in April, so we've postponed that performance. Certainly at least one of the guys has been released since then. So yeah, it's challenging. But my commitment to the guys was, I don't know how this is going to work. We don't have a lot of this kind of stuff in the UK, but I promise I'll make what I can to keep in contact, because I think that is so important to them. I missed a week, and what I did is spoke to the prisons that I was working with and said, look, can I send stuff in? We don't have any technology inside in that sense. So I know, Tommy, you were talking about tablet stuff. It's for us. So that was a bit of a challenge, but what I did was to start to write kind of letters and activity packs to the guys inside, so to the actors, send them stuff. And what I've asked them to do is that we get together at the same time every week. So for example, the Gallowfield Players rehearses on a Friday morning, and we all set aside 3 hours, and we do 3 hours together. We're apart, but we're together. And that's quite a big thing for us, that kind of contact. So I've been fortunate that the prison have let me write to them, which again is not normally acceptable, and to write, you know, specifically to that group of people, and to set activities. So we're doing a whole look around working on the play that we would be working on. So in the Gallowfield Players, it would be an adaptation of The Tempest called Sycorax's Storm, so it's the backstory. So we've been working on a load of stuff on that. I've also been fortunate that the prison have allowed the guy who's done our script writing to send out materials to me, so I've been able to edit the script, we've been able to get it all typed up, and next week it should be going out to everybody, so in lines. We've done a lot of character work already. That kind of spiraled for me though, so for me that became part of what I did, but not the only thing. So from that, in one of the prisons I'd start talking to staff, everybody else. My guys are behind, the whole of the UK is behind the door 23 to 23 and a half hours every day. So all education and all programs have stopped completely. So it started to become well, what happens to those people? And what's sort of spun off from that has been this creation of activity packs. So each week I take a play, and I choose that play based on working with forensic psychology and the safe custody team, the central safe custody team for the English and Wales Prison Service. And we choose, there's a theme that they want to work on, and the play is related to that. And then I produce for them each week newsletter contents that's printed and distributed to every prison in England and Wales. But also I produce 3 packs as well. So I've tried to kind of grade them, and I'm not an education expert, but I've kind of tried to grade pack 1 as being for people with limited literacy, and a lot of the guys will have, or maybe where English isn't the first language. So Lesley, you were talking about translation and the need to make it accessible for people. So a lot of the really simple sentence structures, the story distilled down to probably 5 or 6 simple sentences. And then a lot of the activities will be related to drawing, creating cartoons, creating video game characters, etc. So things that people might not necessarily choose to use Shakespeare, but can make them relatable. And pack 2 is probably more the kind of mainstream literacy. So people who, for me, it's kind of, they can read the newspaper unaided. They don't necessarily need support with reading on a fairly, general day-to-day living basis. So that's got a little bit more around maybe creating text message responses, using things they might be familiar with. And again, take some of the stuff from the narratives, the characters, and how that could play back into their lives. And then pack 3 is I guess aimed probably more at the guys who I'm working with on a regular basis. So more at the people who understand Shakespeare, who have a love of literature, who want to do acting, who want to get more involved. And we've got all sorts, from some basic drama stuff they can do in their cells through to writing back to stuff, creating their own poetry and so on. And one of the big things for me is I've been able to approach the 2 prisons where I have theatre companies and actually get my actors to be able to provide work that feeds into that. So almost all of the illustrations that go out on those packs each week come out from my guys. So they're not formally incarcerated, they're currently incarcerated. We've got poetry, we've got reflective pieces, and I'm just working to develop some exercises as well. So actually I can get the actors who I work with, who are incredibly talented, and some of the most amazing people I know, to be able to be the ones who actually feed back to their peer group. And we've got that across every single prison in the UK now. So that's now formally uploaded and recognised through the central services as being an approved part of what they want to do. So for me, it's been a really challenging time, and it's really difficult, and it's horrible to be separated from my actors. But I've tried to make the most of it and tried to widen that out. And some of the feedback we've got from prisons I've never been in, it's about, it's given me something to talk to my children about. It's given me a way of connecting with my family that I've never had before. It's really wanted me to made me want to go on and do more education. So it's orphanaging. We all want it to end, and I can't wait to get back in there. But I hope that the lessons I've learned from this, I can carry on, and I'm already in talks with psychology about maybe creating ongoing workbooks and so on. But I'm really conscious that I've talked a lot now, so I'm going to shut up.
I don't know, Frannie, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to contribute at all?
I just feel like I buzzed through what we're doing and didn't maybe actually say anything. So yeah, in terms of the stuff that we've done in prison, we haven't figured out a way to engage folks on the inside. To go in a little more detail with our post-release stuff, the program overall, we do in partnership with the Michigan Department of Corrections. And so we ask for folks to be approved through their officers, if they're still on parole, to participate. And what we do is we have this ongoing mentorship. whether it's for personal stuff, professional stuff. We help make connections for folks if we can't provide whatever they're looking for. We've gotten to pay a bunch of people to work with our theater, including on our book that we're working on, which is a critical edition of Richard III, where all the annotations are going to be verbatim quotes from the women's group who worked on it on the inside, and then alumni of that group who are now on the outside. And we've been meeting on Zoom since before it was cool, and making videos and putting them out there. And anybody who wants to like learn more about that should definitely let me know, because I will not be able to shut up about it. And what we're looking to do remotely is every other week a check-in where folks can just kind of touch base on Zoom. And then on the alternate, reading Romeo and Juliet together, because I agree that's a really good one to go back in with. And so by reading it together, these alums can then help her out what it is we're going to do with it when we go back in, and there's going to be more reading and less performing, what kind of written prompts we can give and things like that. So they're going to be really involved in, when we do go back in, they will have had a lot of input into what we're doing. Now I feel like I've said something, so I'm good.
Thank you so much. And just for the record, your intro was wonderful. Okay. I actually want to jump off of the video, because I literally have, all of you have been talking, been writing down like the words that I kind of keep hearing coming up with all of you. And I think technology is one of them, right? Like, because our correction systems are all at different levels of integration or acceptance, depending on where they are on that spectrum of finding ways to bring technology into the spaces. So I actually would love, Frannie, for you to talk just a little bit more about what you have already been doing in terms of the video, because I think that's really interesting for us all as a learning point.
So one of the things that we've done for quite a while now in our in-prison program is we did a case study of the 2016-17 season, which I will send to everyone who wants it. It's one of my favorite things. So we started taking these copious notes, getting as many verbatim quotes as we could for this study, and realized we were gathering all of this really amazing analysis that we've always talked about, but now we've got it in writing. And so then actually one of the men that we worked with on the inside came up with this idea of, why don't we share our edits of the plays with other people? Maybe you guys could make some money on it. And I was like, I don't know about the idea, which evolved into an idea to do with all these millions of amazing quotes that we have about Richard, which, by the way, nobody likes. We decided to put together this critical edition way. Any critical edition is because, this analysis is just as noteworthy and valid and interesting as anybody else's. And so we want to present it that exact same way, providing a point of access and also, a learning opportunity for those who have had a lot of opportunity to work with Shakespeare. Anyway, the way we decided to do that with our alums, once we got the funding to pay them, was to, the same way we had circle up conversations on the inside, to get together on Zoom, because people are actually all over the country, and to read and have similar discussions and just see what we came up with. And it's been really, really cool. And so folks have, we took us a minute to get used to the format, on and off and internet and like running rescue missions in the desert and getting on the cell phone car and things like that. But we found that it's been a really fantastic way to stay connected, so much so that like we were already sort of prepped for this. And immediately something I thought was, thank God I already have these bi-weekly meetings with people, and that I know we can stay connected this way. So now taking that experience and saying, where can we go from there? We know we can't connect with the folks on the inside this way, but what can we do out here? Now that we know that this is a possibility, particularly because folks can call in on their phones if they're not to be on the internet. And so that's what we found. We've had a lot of success with it so far.
Thank you so much. The other thing that I kind of heard was, in these sort of feeling like there's this expedited timeline happening in California, like we're gonna open in July, and you all kind of going, whoa, like I hear this. I hear like, how we know this is gonna be clean? How is this gonna be safe? And then also I think acknowledging that something that you also said, Frannie, about being able to sort of make, I think, an assumption that I'm not going to be able, even if I get in the door, to get to the place where we're performing and we're interacting right away, right? Like, so I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about how they're thinking about what that might be whenever that timeline is for you.
Yeah, for me, I guess we're in a position that, as I say, we were due to perform a production in one prison. It's got a lot of guys, relatively short sentences, so I might now have to be an acceptance that that time has passed. It's really hard because they worked really hard on it, but certainly one of the guys is already gone. I think we're probably going to get a couple more released, which is great for them, but obviously very difficult then in terms of the performance, and we've had so long out now. So we've picked up Othello as our next, which was going to be our next play anyway. So for me, I guess in both, in all, assuming that I can go back in and reset up in the one that we were just starting in, it's going to be probably readings for a while. It's going to be text work. It's going to be character work. Certainly for the two that I've been in for a while, and the Gallowfield plays especially, where we've been together for 2.5 years, those guys write to me. Some of them write to me every week. Some of them write to me every 2 days. And I just get packs and packs and packs of stuff. It's great. I now have pen friends. I never had pen friends before. It's fabulous. It's going to be really hard because there's going to be no physical contact, no going near each other. And that's not what we are. But I think we'll just be so grateful. And thankfully the space we work in is big enough to accommodate us doing that kind of whole social distancing thing. The difficulty is going to be the fact that you put 16 people back in a room, 16 people that are full of admiration and respect and love for each other, and it's actually really difficult to keep them apart. And I get that, and I'm going, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but of course I will if it means I can get back in there. And I'd go back in tomorrow if I could do it, and I could do it safely, but I can't. So I guess it's just prepping that and trying to work with the prison system as to how soon we can do it, and we can do it as safely as we can. And it's just watch the space, and it will be distance reading for a while, which will be hard, but it will be better than not being together.
I think the challenges we have, speaking of what Rowan was talking about, just sort of dovetailing off that, is that I alluded to the fact that our architecture sort of determines a lot of our programming. And so also it being a jail and not a prison, which is, they're vastly different in how you run programming. There's so much movement and so much transitions and so many things that the detainees are dealing with pertaining to their incarceration and their social services and things, that we insert our programming where we can into the daily schedule and into their time frame. And the thing that's interesting about this, when we do get a chance to go back in and do programming, we typically don't do a lot of productions where we are working with detainees, putting a production together for several weeks. It's just something that typically doesn't happen because there's so much movement and you're losing folks. And it's hard to keep something together. We typically do things sometimes in a 2 or 3 day model where things come together very quickly in a devised theater piece, whether it's in classic work, temporary work. We originate a lot of plays. We do a lot of playwriting and a lot of creation and playmaking in our housing units, where they will create something in a day or two with a couple of teaching artists, and it'll be celebrated within the house, and then we're on to the next project. People are moving and leaving. So I'm not too concerned with getting things up and running again, because we're really sort of built with our community providers and with our internal faculty to drive that stuff instantly. The thing that I talked about before with the pivot is being able to use the technology that we have to our advantage. Is we now have source material 24/7 in their hands, so that we can program remotely. We can send things in on the tablets, direct them to that, view this video, take a look at the Patrick Stewart sonnets, take a look at them. I want you to engage with that, because when we come for class next week, we're going to build this. So that helps us out a lot, being able to have that as a resource and being able to expand upon our programming. It's not always the perfect world, but it definitely gives us an extra advantage in the sense that the tablets are going to be something to help sustain us while we're out of the facilities. But they do absolutely appreciate the human contact. And to me, it's like, I've had a lot of opportunities to work in prisons and jails, and I actually chose this position because of working in a jail. And I wanted to work in the environment where the human condition was very challenged, because these men and women that come in have so many things they're dealing with, that we provide a really extraordinary opportunity for relief and to departure and freedom within that, as you all know. But it's unique in a jail environment if you can pull that off, especially when you don't have theaters and classrooms and performance spaces. You can do it in a hallway or a cafeteria or a gym or a housing unit day room. We're already built to do that. We've designed the programs to fit there. When we bring in a Shakespeare play, sometimes we'll perform in a gymnasium, but more than likely, we'll tour Shakespeare productions and go right into a housing unit where people are sitting and eating, coming out of the showers and the toilets and the places that they are coming to the common room, and they're sitting there when a Shakespeare play is happening, or a performance of an original play, or a musical concert, or poetry slams. And so it really sort of creates a home environment. And something that's unique to what the artists respond to when they go in is that you're inserting yourself into someone's home. And that has allowed us to really build really deep relationships with all of the detainees we get to work with, so that we can go from facility to facility as people move familiar. And as I said, the arts programs are just by far the most popular. And the artists that come in are the rock stars and the heroes and the people that they celebrate, because they know that they don't have to be there. They come there, and primarily a lot of it is voluntary, and they know that, and there's a lot of respect for it. So I think that when we are able to go back in, we're able to relaunch these models that we've had before, but also build upon the tablet and build what the pandemic has sort of set as a new bar for us. As I like to say, it's a different day. It's actually a real day.
Thank you, Tommy. I was curious,
Sure.
Rich, I'm thinking about, there's been a lot of conversation about folks that whose programming has been frozen, right? Like Frannie can't actually get into. So what I was, and in the news, sorry, fragmented thought. In the news, we've also, been hearing a lot about people being released, right? Because they've been trying to thin out the spaces. And so do you think this is also a moment where we, as an industry of practitioners, can also reevaluate how we can doing now and still find another place to take what we would do on the inside, then now to help people in the reentry process, if that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I think I have a different perspective or view of the fear of going back in too soon. Don't get me wrong, I more than any, because I share with the men and women when I go back in, I'm still like a reflection of you, and you're a reflection. I did 30 years, so I can relate to, other than being personal stuff, I know what they're going through, and I just, my heart goes out to them, and they're with them, right? Because through this, we had 3 alumni come home, and they've come home to this. And so we just had one last week say, I felt safer inside, even though we know the care system for inmates is not the best. Coming out to this, it's like, I don't want to come out and get sick. So I get that. And so the releases, I don't think they're from any state prison. They were being released from jails, from county jails, very short term, less serious crimes. I don't know the full detail of how they decided who was going to get home, but it was just jails. It wasn't prisons. So what we can learn from it is, I don't know how they're keeping numbers. We're releasing them because of COVID. Who's to say they checked them before they released them and brought it back out here? I don't know. So I don't know how we would figure out a way, to keep, each other safe. I want to go back in. I do. One of my things was going back in, I was going to prisons where I spent time in. And so seeing my brothers there, I would hug them, you know, and I don't want to go back in and not be able to hug them. And I know I have to be totally professional with going back in because, you know, there's rules and regulations, CDC, we're not to get too close with the inmates. But I shared with my supervisor, I'm like, Jeremy, it's hard for me to not, I mean, these are guys that I unfortunately spent some of them decades with, and now I can't hug them. So, and he says to me, you know what, Rich, I trust your judgment. Just be aware that some places are stricter. I get all that. And so you mentioned technology, you know, that's number one stressors. I know it was for me. And so these three gentlemen that just came home, just meetings, they don't know how to use the computers to get on. And so those are the things that, you know, they deal with, that I dealt with. I've gotten better. You see, Melinda, I was like texting you, I'm like, I'm here waiting for you to let me in. So, and now I get to teach them when they come home, you know, a little bit saying I'm an expert in technology, not even close, but now I get to help them out here. And so now I know what my teachers and mentors felt like when I came home, and others, because these three men are parolees who I was teaching as a teaching artist now. You know, it's one thing, I was a facilitator and teacher of my group at Avenal State Prison. And I mentioned earlier, you know, 21 of us have come home. I knew them. So I knew what I can say to them to push. When I go into these other prisons, I'm meeting them for the first time. So I can't, you know, there's a gap of how I can approach them because they don't know me, I don't know them. I'm meeting for the first time. And so, but little by little, I was in their shoes just a little over 2 years ago. So they relate to me. They hold on to what I, you know, share, what I say, what I teach. And now, you know, to have them come out, it's just a blessing. And before I go, you guys, I just want to say to each and one of you, like for real, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your dedication, for the time that you're in, because it's people like you who have made differences in people like us. And so the hope that we now, right, because I'm part of it, that we give them, it just, I'm just honored to be in this group. You know, at first I was like, oh man, what am I gonna share with? But then as soon as I started hearing you guys talk about prisons and lifers and, you know, the guys coming, I'm like, this is my group right here. This is my people that helped me get out. So just, I wanna thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. So we have a couple minutes, and I do have a checkout question for us, and which I prepped everybody with, but I want to just go ahead and ask it, I think, and repeat it for Lesley, who wasn't able to be here at the beginning. And that question is a question for our community that's actually watching this right now. We're going to gather together in another week with the larger network, and hopefully have a second part to this conversation that is a little bit wider and will allow folks to, you know, hear this, process this, and then come back with maybe more specific things that they might be interested in hearing about. But I feel like, you know, from where we all sit in this space, it'd be really helpful to queue up a question for them to think about. And how do they think about being adaptable during this time with their programming, whatever their circumstances may be. And so, yeah, so I would love for each of you to share that, and then I will come back and just wrap us up at the end. So do you mind, Rowan, if I begin with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just one little thing before I do my question. Just to say, Rich, there is no people like us and people like you. There's people. And it's about when we got over that, because actually the people in this conversation know we're people and we've all made mistakes, and some of those mistakes have landed us where we are. So yeah, sorry, that really wasn't what you asked for at all, Karen, was it? but I just think it's a massively important thing to say. I'm honoured to work with my actors, and my life is more enriched from working with them. There's certainly not an element that I go in and I help them. There's an element that I go to each other. And I guess for me, the big question, and you know, there's so many questions around how do we deal, but we're kind of dealing with it and probably all fumbling our way through it, because that's all we can ask for this whole corona, you know, thing to happen. But how do we learn from this, and how do we make stuff available, and how do we, so for me, one of the big things has been around, you know, being able to reach out to all of our 82,000 people behind bars in the UK, or in England, Wales, and also the Scottish ones, which I don't have the numbers for, sorry. I think we're 87,000 in total, which I never would have had the opportunity to do before. Now, I'd rather we hadn't had the crisis, but I'm grateful that the crisis enabled me to do that. So how do we take the best of what we're doing now and the best of what we as a community can bring to this, and how do we make that an embedded forward? Because there'll still always be those people behind their doors. There'll be those people in solitary. There'll be those people who self-isolate for various reasons, who've got mental health issues that mean they don't feel able to, you know, communicate with the wider group within the prison network. How do we had to do now and make that something that makes their pathway maybe just that little tiny bit easier? But sometimes a little tiny bit makes a big difference, and sometimes knowing somebody cares means you don't feel quite so alone.
Thank you. Frannie, do you mind going next?
Yeah. Big question for me is how we fund prison programs that are not able to operate in prisons. And aside from the programming that we're doing, which we do need to figure out, which needs to be adaptable, given there are likely to be surges of this virus, even after we are able to get back in, how do we convince people to give us the funding that we need to do programs that are now even more unpredictable than they were before? That's what I would like to know.
Great, thank you. Rich, you have any questions to share?
Yeah, I would say, you know, in prison, respect is such a big thing, right? And out here during this pandemic, I live in an apartment complex that has 10 apartments, right? And prior to this pandemic, I didn't talk to any of my neighbors. And during this time, I have conversations with them. You know, we check in with each other. And so my question would be is, does it take something of COVID, right, such nature, for people to just respect each other and just check in with each other? How can we continue to do that once we get back to some kind of normalcy, would be my question.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Lesley. Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying how inspired I am by everyone on this panel and by the amazing things that you're doing and the great silver linings you're finding during this difficult period. And I'm not worried about our adaptability. We're creative artists. We'll figure the adaptability part out. We'll continue to do our best to make this work possible. The big question on my mind right now is, we're all out protesting in the streets, demanding policing reform. And I'm really desperate to have that conversation include reform of our carceral systems, because they are part and parcel of policing and what we call criminal justice in this country. Really hope that the conversation will be about mass incarceration as well as police reform. The work that we do in the prisons, we love the personal transformation that happens and the learning that we all share together. But we do this work also to shine a light on the national shame of mass incarceration, so that so many people in our community will see the incredible skill and talent and intelligence and deep depth of humanity and wisdom in the people who we wrongfully incarcerates country. So I want to keep asking the question of how this time of transformation that we're in can include a transformation of our mass incarceration system.
Awesome, thank you. Tommy.
Thank you. You know, as theatricians, we all have an enormous capacity for the resources that we've been exposed to, that we've acquired, and that we've put together over the years of doing our work as individual artists and coming to this specific work. And I think as we unpack and take the things into prisons and jails and deliver the programming that we do, I think one of the discoveries I had is that I always like to work with what's topical and what's happening right now. And as Lesley is in the protests right now, we started a while back. We wrote a play, started with one individual about Kaepernick. And what happened is we took the Colin Kaepernick first scene that this guy wrote and went to another housing unit, and a couple of guys added on to it and added on and added on. And all of a sudden now there's a full-length play. It's called Taking a Knee, and it's brilliant. And it handles a real social issue that we're talking about right now that Colin Kaepernick has sort of shed light on. So I'd like to say to the community watching this that one of the things my team is working out right now is laying it out on the table, and we're discussing and working with resources and with individuals across the country to talk about race and to work on the issues of race and to bring it in as part of our curricular discussions. And a lot of the original playwriting and poetry and music creation that we do is to really take a look at the subject and connect the men and women that we're working with on the inside right now to the conversations that are happening on the outside. That to me is an essential thing that we do in a lot of the work that happens. And it happens in Shakespeare, it happens in original writing, it's all there. So how do we direct what we're delivering and what we're about to bring in and to keep growing and building upon? How do we connect to the social issues happening right now? And with specific, you know, lead to what Lesley talked about is the marches and the protests that are happening now, because everybody on the inside wants to know about it, wants to connect with it. And if they're fortunate enough to have a television blaring in their housing unit, they might pick up some news, but where are they going to have the conversations? Where are they going to unload and unpack and deliver that? It's in the arts program happens. And so as a theatrician, I'm searching on the outside for those things, those resources and those ideas so that we can then incorporate those into our work.
It's wonderful. Thank you. I think I will also just add my own thought to this, which is how are we as a network educating ourselves in this moment? How are we looking at how the histories of white supremacy and racial oppression actually subconsciously inform us in our choices and how we create programming and who we invite to be part of our programming? And I think it's really important to think about how we are implementing input from the community that we are so focused on serving and centering their voices in the creation of what we do. So that would be my question. And it's something that I think about all the time as a person of color as well, and a Black woman. I'm very conscious that this is a space of practitioners where it is traditionally very, very white. And so I'm wondering, what are we going to do going forward to think about how we're sharing our skills, our knowledge, and when we're working in places that are predominantly Black and brown. And lastly, I will say to all of the people that have been watching this or that will watch this, we are so grateful that you are going to be part of this conversation, because we cannot do any of what we do without community to support and to sharpen us. To think about some things that I heard today, thinking about language and literacy, our technology, thinking about our safety, how we're communicating, and making relationships that we have, and then thinking about reentry, and I think also technological literacy with the communities that we serve. And so I leave it to you all now to think about what your questions will be, and we'll see you in a week on June 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll have a live Q&A with our panel here. And I thank each and every person that took the time to be here, have this conversation. I'm so appreciative of each of you that you do, and we'll say farewell.